All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. Bob, who is now catching up in his sleep after draft week and then writing the profiles and the undrafted free agents. So, Bob, we were talking last week about tight ends and Foster Moreau, and he actually signed the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some interesting things to say. He talked about, how he's still in treatment for his blood cancer, but he is going to be cleared very soon, or is cleared to participate in football again. So, what do you know about everything that's happened with Foster?
Yeah, and I think that's the most exciting and heartwarming part is that the fact that his physical health and his treatment regimen is so far along and much better than what was originally being reported. That he's healthy enough to presumably resume football activities very, very shortly. Now we'll see if that actually transpires. I mean, we've heard a lot of things over the years, with physical injuries from players, and they'll be ready for this, or they'll be ready for that, or they'll be ready for this week, and then that time comes and goes, and still no player. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. But what basically happened, obviously, as is widely known, Foster is a New Orleans resident. Grew up in the New Orleans area, went to high school, of course, went to college at Baton Rouge, at LSU. So he certainly has ties in the area. I think that's one of the main things that attracted him to a free agent visit with the Saints in the first place. And then when the medicals review, when the medical reports done by Saints doctors revealed to Hodgkins, they must have treated him in a way that made him feel so comfortable and so confident that when he returned to New Orleans, a couple weeks later to finish his medical exams, there had to have been conversations with team officials, that said, "Hey, you know what? If you're going to play football again, we want you. We have confidence in you, and this is our plan for you." Which a lot of us figured would be, sign him to the contract, place him on the non-football injury list, treat him, and then when he's healthy, return to the field. And it's that kind of loyalty and that kind of treatment that means a lot to the individual player. So I have to believe that as much as his New Orleans and Louisiana ties, is why Foster Moreau is a New Orleans Saint as we speak.
Absolutely, and I think he was very appreciative, first off, that the Saints medical staff caught this. I know there were stories that were out. We talked about this last week, that some other teams were competing for him and so forth. But I think he really felt an obligation, aside from wanting to play for his hometown team, but also, hey, you guys found this. I was going to sign with you until you found this. And we now have a plan to treat this, and I can play football. So absolutely, I'm going to sign with you. And I think it's a great move. It's a positive move for him, for the team, for his health, but I think it's a good personnel move as well. And I think he can contribute a lot to this team. And the other thing we saw was the signing of James Washington, the receiver from the Steelers. I know he had some injury problems, but how do you see this playing? Is this a camp body, or is this somebody actually going to compete for a job? Because he looked very promising as a Steeler, and then the injuries set in.
And he's not a camp body, but I'm also not going to go nearly as far as a lot of Saints social media. That this is the piece that's going to make the receiving core. No, he's not that either, folks. James Washington is a good player, a solid football player. And like you said, Alan, we saw that with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, he was a rather early day 2 selection by Pittsburgh out of Oklahoma State, where he put up some big numbers. And throughout his Steelers career, which lasted about 4 or 5 years, He was consistently a number 3, number 4 type of receiver. He's a guy that has the speed to take the top off of defense, but he's also a good enough open field runner that he could take a short pass and break big gains on it. What you're not going to get from James Washington is a precise route runner. He was never really able to expand on that. Oklahoma State receivers traditionally don't have much of a route tree coming in anyway, and he never showed the route precision to expand on that with Pittsburgh. But James can run out of the slot. If you give him some limited patterns, and like we know, like we've seen, he has the speed as an outside receiver, to be a threat that way. And what is also lost on a lot of people, the Pittsburgh Steelers expect their wide receivers to be blockers also. And James Washington is a very good blocker at that position. I saved that for last because we heard the last couple years that the main reason Traquan Smith still had a spot on the New Orleans roster was that he's a good blocker. Okay. First of all, I'd like my receivers to actually get open and catch passes, but that's that's just me. But the Saints have always expected their receivers to be at least adequate blockers. So James Washington is going to bring that to the table as well. I think at the very least, if you look at the Saints receiving core, you have to figure that Michael Thomas has a secure job. Same with Chris Olave, and most likely Rashid Shaheed. After that, it's pretty open. I'm in love with A.T. Perry. I've admitted that in pre-draft, months before the draft, but he's a 6th round pick, so you can't count on that for a roster spot. Traquan, he has an edge because of his experience in the system and the apparent blackmail photographs that he has of Mickey Loomis and maybe the Benson family. They brought in Brian Edwards. Edwards, of course, worked with Derek Carr with the Raiders. He's a big-bodied wideout that gives them a little bit of injury insurance in case Michael Thomas gets banged up again. And then you have James Washington, who's somewhere in between a Traquan Smith and a Brian Edwards. I fully expect all those spots to be up for grabs. And don't forget about the undrafted guys like Malik Flowers, returning practice squad back into the roster guys like Keith Kirkwood and Kirk Merritt. They've all had good training camp moments and are good special teamers, which is probably what the back half of this receiving core is going to have to do to make this roster at those final 2 or 3 spots that they keep at the receiver position.
Well, you jumped ahead to where I was going to go next because I'm trying to get an idea of the receiving core, and you're looking at about 6 guys. And one of the things that Dennis Allen talked about both before rookie minicamp and also during rookie minicamp was that Michael Thomas had some hardware taken out of his foot, and that he is on a good path. He's a little ahead of the curve, but he's on a good path for full recovery, so he should be available by the time training camp starts. And if we say the top 3 receivers are Thomas, Smith, and Thomas, Olave, and Shaheed, who do you see filling out? Is it 3 guys or 2 guys that are competing for the final 2 spots? Final 2 spots. All these guys competing for, and then is the 6th spot, which is really a kick returner. Is that how you kind of see this played out? I know they didn't ask this question very well, but basically, I'm thinking that whole lump of receivers are competing for receiving spots 4 and 5, with the 6th spot being the kick returner.
Yeah,
is that kind of how you see this?
That's absolutely the way I see it. And the Saints have kept 6 receivers the last few years because they have devoted one of those spots, to a primary a kickoff / punt returner.
Yeah.
And we've seen that be Deontay Harris first, and
Hmm.
then Rashid Shaheed last year. Now both Deontay and Shaheed developed into bona fide wideouts, which was a benefit to the Saints. But you got to believe that if they're looking at Shaheed as their third receiver, they've learned from the mistake that they made with Deontay Hardy, and that too many snaps to a smaller guy. Now Shaheed is not a small guy, but Deontay was. But too many snaps it can take away maybe a little bit of why they made the roster in the first place. So again, if they believe that Shaheed is their number 3 guy, and I got to believe that when I look at the depth chart now, then they are hoping that a guy like Malik Flowers or maybe James Washington, he returned kickoffs early in his career with the Steelers. If one of those guys can step forward, and at least take a little bit off of Shaheed's plate, either be a punt returner or a kickoff returner, if not both, then they will definitely keep 6 wideouts. But those first 5 spots are going to be for guys that are going to get legitimate playing time in the offense, and 3, 4, 5. They'll have to play special teams too, but you're not necessarily looking at them as as your regular kick returner.
Yeah, because I was thinking about this too, because somebody already threw up a mock. I think you threw one up too, a mock 51-man roster. And I said, okay, so you'll probably have 5 receivers active on game day, including the kick returner. The 6th guy is going to be inactive most game days. It doesn't necessarily mean the 6th receiver, but I was thinking, okay, Edwards and Washington are probably competing for that spot along with Traquan Smith as the number 4 guy. A.T. Perry, Baker, Merritt, you start throwing all those guys in from last year on the practice squad competing for that number 5 spot. And then the 6th spot is the kick returner. And Malik Flowers, some of the other guys are going to try out as kick returner. They're competing for that 6th spot. And then they're going to make a decision accordingly. I do not see a possibility, though, at least in my mind, that Edwards, Washington, and Perry, for example, all make the final 51. Just because those are 3 guys that pretty much give you the same things. You're going to be looking for someone who's going to be the kick returner. You're going to be looking for someone who can return kicks, but also can be that 5th receiver. Like if Perry has a great, and I'm just throwing Perry out there, but if Perry has a great training camp and a great preseason and doesn't get hurt, but he's not quite ready to move up into that starting 4, or they don't even feel comfortable with him as that 5, I can see them making him basically, he makes the roster, but he's designated inactive every week. So, that just makes it that much harder to figure out those last couple guys. Is that how you see this?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if A.T. Perry is anywhere as good as I think he's going to be. But if you're right, if he just either doesn't grasp the system quickly enough, or shows the coaches quite enough to crack that top 4, but he does flash enough talent where you, as the Saints coach, you feel like if you subject him to waivers, hoping to bring him back to the practice squad, that he'll never make it back, then you're almost forced to keep him on that active roster at that number 5, number 6 spot, that game day inactive, because he's not going to be a kick returner. At least he didn't show that propensity in college. But that's also a good reason why a team like the Saints would carry 6 wideouts, because they are afraid that the number 4, number 5 guy, who's not going to be your kick returner, is just not going to clear waivers, so you can stash him on the practice squad. So that's why roster decisions like that get made, that a lot of people don't realize, why are they keeping this guy, or why are they keeping this many players at this position? That's the reason why.
Calvin, you're preaching to the choir with that one. Um, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's how I look at this because it's there's a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of maneuvering of the roster to keep players and guys that you're probably going to say, hey, like let's just say Kirk Merritt, because he's another local kid. But Kirk Merritt, let's say he has another great training camp because he had a good one last year,
Mhm.
and it was good enough to be on the practice squad and even moved into the active roster spot and play a few snaps as an active receiver. But he's a guy you could probably slide into the practice squad. He'll clear waivers because other teams going to look at him and go, does he really offer me something that I want him on my active roster? Merritt, no. A guy like A.T. Perry, maybe so, only because he's a rookie. You have a lot of recent footage of him at
Mhm.
Wake Forest that you can go to. He was a guy projected to go higher in the draft than he did. Um, so that's why I see that. Now we could very well be hyping up this guy, and he turns out to be terrible. He's another Mike Haas, uh, Chase Lyman. Just go
Mhm.
down the list of guys that Onome Ojo, guys that the Saints brought in that everyone liked, and come training camp, he just doesn't show anything. I have a good feeling he will because I really like this draft class. I mean, top to bottom, I really like this
Yeah.
class. There's not a guy on this in this class I'm going, eh. We talked a lot about Jake. I know I'm gonna say Horner. It's not. It's Herner, right? Jake
Hayner.
Herner. Hayner. Thank you. Thank you. I could see the word. I just couldn't pronounce it properly. Um, but here the rookie minicamp was just this weekend. And granted, shorts and shells, it's not anything to get excited about. It's a teaching session more than an actual practice. And they got guys that are trying out. So you have a lot of guys hustling out there. But they said, Jake Hayner throws a very tight spiral, makes great decisions with the ball, showed a lot of moxie out there, showed the leadership. The stuff that we saw at the Senior Bowl carried over. Now, granted, he's just got a Cliff Notes version of the playbook. It's only about that thick. He's not getting the War and Peace level playbook that's going to get thrown at him, but he was just running this much of it. But he was in command, and that is something they really, really liked about him. So there's another guy who has a good shot at making the roster. So if you keep three quarterbacks on the roster, that's one less spot available for a
Mhm.
specialist. So
Yeah, it really is, and that's where the advantage of Taysom Hill,
mhm,
was such a good thing over the last couple of years. Because Taysom, and I'll go to my grave saying this: Taysom is not a starting NFL quarterback, but he was good enough to start games. He was good enough to win games. As long as the Saints curtailed their system for what, he did well. Nevertheless, he was good enough where Sean Payton felt confident that if something happens to my top guy or something happens, I feel confident that I can turn to Taysom Hill. So that allowed them to keep only two quarterbacks on their active roster, allowing them, like you said, to keep a sixth wide receiver or a sixth safety. Another thing that they have done in recent years. I doubt they're going to have that luxury this year, unless if they do. And this is a wild scenario that Jordy Hultberg asked me about earlier today. If Hayner absolutely balls out and really, really impresses the Saints coaches from the start, could Jameis Winston be dangled as trade bait if another team is looking for an experienced quarterback or has an injury? I told him that I doubted it because they kept Winston around because they wanted experience behind Derek Carr.
mhm.
But you never know. It is a scenario that could play itself out midway to late into training camp.
Yeah, the only way I could see that happening is if the Saints suddenly get an injury wave through a position and they need to make a move. And that would be a position where you're like, okay, I can trade a Winston with knowing I got Taysom Hill, I can trade a Winston, and I feel confident enough with Hayner that if he has to finish a game because Hill's involved in the game plan elsewhere, I can do it. But we're talking doomsday scenario,
Yeah.
honestly. You're talking about you lost a Demario Davis, you lost a Cam Jordan, you lost a major piece that you need to fill in, and you need to make a desperation move to go get that. So, I just I don't see it this year, especially because Winston's on a 1-year deal. So, it would be hard for a guy like Winston to be really good trade bait for anybody.
Hmm.
I mean, because it would have to be a doomsday scenario for that team too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just say the 49ers, for example. The 49ers, they lose I can't call him his nickname, but they lose both quarterbacks. They lose Trey not Levis. Trey Levi. Is that
Lance?
Trey Lance,
Hmm.
thank you. I don't know why I'm having problem names tonight. And then Purdy does not recover well from his surgery, and they throw the
Remember, they have Sam Darnold now too. So
like I said, they
I
got
know,
no quarterback.
I know, and I agree.
Yeah, I know. I'm kidding, but yeah, it's if you have that kind of scenario where Lance is injured again, Lance comes in and he gets hurt. Purdy's not recovering like he's supposed to, and then you have to trot out Sam Darnold. Now you're looking at, okay, we need a veteran starter, and who are we going to get? Are we going to get Matt Ryan out of the booth? Or are we going to go make a move for Wentz? What we're now looking through the garbage pile.
Yeah.
What's in the garbage pile, and what is the blue light special available? And the Saints are looking at the 49ers roster going, you know what? I like that linebacker you guys got.
Hmm.
I'll take that. I'll take one of your linebackers again because they've
Hmm.
done business before for that.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of scenario I could see playing out. And that would have to happen in training camp. I can't see that during the regular season, a team making that kind of move. But in training camp, I can see.
Maybe 1 or 2 weeks in, but
Yeah,
not at the trade deadline or anything like that.
right. Exactly. Um, Well, Donald, that's where I was going to next. So they got some rumors floating around right now. I think one of the Saints players, I think it was the guy from the Chiefs, the defensive
Hmm.
tackle we signed, said, "Hey, yo, 55, what you up to?" Talking about Frank Clark. Um, Now Clark's a pass rusher. He's
Hmm.
not an interior defensive lineman. But do you think there are any kind of moves that the Saints may make between now and training camp? Because you no longer have to worry about losing
Right.
comp picks. And yeah, there's a lot of mercenaries out there right now. But can you see them making a move for like a Miles Jack or look for a defensive tackle that may still be out there?
I'll tell you, linebacker is a position that literally everybody wants them to make a move, and I get why, because on paper there's zero experience and productivity behind Demario Davis and Pete Werner. So I understand why, but I wrote a piece on this the other day, and yeah, it revolved around DeMarco Jackson. First of all, I think they're going to give Zach Bond every chance in the world to earn the spot that was occupied by Caden Ellis the last couple years, which was basically, I mean, Ellis only had a breakout year because Werner got hurt. Otherwise, Ellis was an early down linebacker and short yardage guy when they had 3 linebackers on the field, which for the Saints is only like 18 to 22 snaps a game. They're going to give Zach Bond a chance to earn that. But I also know for a fact that they really like DeMarco Jackson, their 5th round pick from last year. I understand why Saints fans don't feel confident in him because he hasn't seen the field yet, having missed his whole rookie year. But I think it was very telling that New Orleans did not sign a free agent linebacker before the draft, that New Orleans did not draft a linebacker during the draft. And I know, different people have come at me saying, oh, there were rumors they were interested in Drew Sanders and then Denver took him. Okay. They might have thought about taking a linebacker, but they didn't.
Mhm.
And there were more linebackers in the draft than Drew Sanders. So I think it was very telling that, and I hate to use this line because Sean Payton has given me PTSD over this line. They seem to like what they have in the room. And again, the Saints more often than not employ only 2 linebackers in most defensive alignments. And as long as Warner stays healthy, as long as Davis stays healthy, knock on wood, they have their duo. And I think that they want to develop DeMarco Jackson. But I understand why fans want to see a Zach Cunningham or a Miles Jack or a Rashaan Evans or Quan Alexander, because all of those guys are proven pros. They all have the style of play that the Saints like to see out of their linebackers. But what I think is going to happen, I think through minicamp and OTAs, they're going to give these young guys, they're going to give Bond a shot. They're going to give Jackson a shot. They're going to see what they have in their undrafted rookies, Anthony Orji and Nick Anderson. And if none of those guys really are progressing like the coaches hope, I think at that stage you'll then see them double back and see what's available on the free agent market, or try to swing a trade for a mid or late round pick on a veteran from another team, because that's the kind of moves we've seen the Saints make at linebacker over the last 2 or 3 years. But I would be very surprised to see a move for a veteran at the linebacker position before that. Again, they want to see what the young guys have through OTAs and through mini camps. And I think the same thing out of defensive end. Yeah, they know Frank Clark is out there. Clark played with Tyrann Mathieu. Clark played with Colin Saunders. Clark played with Tano Passigno. So, familiar faces have been the theme for the Saints this whole offseason. So that's a name to keep an eye on. And Ngakoue, Yannick Ngakoue, a mercenary like you just talked about. He's another name who I think would fit well in the Saints system. But they spent a 2nd-round pick on Isaiah Foskey. They like Granderson. They liked Passigno enough to re-sign him. So I think they feel rather content there, unless Turner continues to disappoint them, or Foskey again. Once Foskey gets his contract signed and he's on the field for OTAs and mini camps, if they're seeing something that makes them think, maybe this guy's not going to be ready in game for a big role in week 1, at that stage, then you might see them go after a Ngakoue, Frank Clark, somebody like that.
Well, and that was something I was going to mention too, because Turner is determining a lot of these moves right now. How does Turner fit in this defense now? Can he contribute to this defense? And I think if Turner turns out to be a big disappointment, then you might see a move for depth. And these guys that we're talking about as a defensive end, they really would be 3rd down specialists.
Yes.
Frank Clark would be a 3rd down specialist, not a guy that's going to play 1st, 2nd down. And based on what I heard out of rookie minicamp, they really, really, really like Foskey. I mean, they are hyped about Foskey. Night, Will.
Sorry.
But yeah, they really, really like this guy. And I think they're going to give him a lot of opportunities to start, or at least rotate in a lot, especially on 3rd down packages. So you're talking about a guy, if you brought in a Frank Clark, if you brought in a Ngakoue or someone like that, you're taking snaps away from Foskey. And that's not because Cam Jordan's not coming off the field.
No.
I mean, he's 34 years old, 32 years old. They're talking about renegotiating a contract for him to let him retire as a Saint, essentially. So they're very confident in Cam Jordan. So now you're only talking about really a pass rusher on is it the left side? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's going against the right tackle, so it's the left side. Okay, yeah, I forget sometimes too, but yeah, you're really talking about one pass rushing position. And the other thing the Saints defense likes to do is rotate guys into the defensive tackle position or the NASCAR package. And I still think that's where they ultimately envision a guy like Turner to
Yeah.
be a defensive end / defensive tackle. Not as a run stuffer, but as a pass rusher inside. So, I understand what people are talking about as far as wanting these players. These are good players that still have something left in the tank, but it's where do you fit in this defense? Whose snaps you take away? And I think right now, Foskey and my computer keeps shutting the screen down. I don't know why. Braziz, those are the two guys they really like and want to see on the field a lot.
Yeah, and we talked about it a lot leading up to the draft and during our draft coverage that Dennis Allen and this team needed their first two picks to have immediate impacts. So don't think for 1 second that they don't envision Brzee and Foskey having those exact kind of impacts. That's why they drafted them. That's why they brought in Saunders and Shepard in free agency over some other older defensive tackles that were available. They have a vision. Dennis Allen has a vision for what he wants out of that defensive line, and I think it's coming together very nicely. Now, again, it's dependent on your two high rookie picks, to develop pretty quickly. It's dependent on Peyton Turner staying healthy, and it's dependent on Cam Jordan not suffering a rapid decline. I think 2 out of those 3 things I see the confidence in. Turner, I'm not so sure, but you never know. I do think I can see the role that you just described. We saw that a little bit out of Peyton Turner in his rookie year. He played a lot more inside, than what people realize. Not on running downs, but if you have Foskey develop as a pass rusher, Cam is always going to stay on the field. You can also rotate, passing inside or outside, and Granderson has that length you like on the edge. You see how it's coming together, folks, and then you have 2 big-bodied athletes in Shepard and Saunders who give you a lot more interior versatility than what a guy like Shai Tuttle or Malcolm Roach ever was able to give you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just got to picture this defense with, flexibility on a defensive line. They want to rush 4. But they also want to keep these defensive linemen fresh. So they want to be able to rotate guys in, slide people in and out. So the quarterback and the offense, when the opposing offensive line is making the calls, they don't know who's rushing. They're guessing based on the alignment, but you could run a stunt. You could run all kinds of things like that, and you can make things happen. So, and apparently the defensive coordinator and defensive line coaches both were having a pretty positive impact on the media that were standing there watching at rookie minicamp, really showing a lot of teaching, showing a lot of individual, because they've got so many coaches now on staff, really breaking into very small groups where they're doing a lot of individual instructions with just 2 or 3 players. So it's a huge difference. I feel really optimistic. I know a lot of people are so down on Dennis Allen, and a lot of people are so down on this coaching staff. It's like he brought all his old Raiders people here. The difference I see, I think, is the Saints front office got Dennis Allen the kind of players he said he wanted. He's got the coaches he wanted to teach these players. So I think he's really setting himself up for success. So if they fail, it's going to end up being his fault, that you're not the coach that you said you were. But I can't see that, because you don't turn a defense that's been terrible throughout all of Peyton's tenure. I'm even going over Greg Williams, because Greg Williams covered up a lot of stuff with turnovers. You can't tell me a coach that managed to turn this defense into something resembling the 2000 Saints defense, the Jim Moore, Steve Sidwell kind of defenses, even the Bum Phillips, Wade Phillips kind of defenses, in terms of production. With last year, you had Marshawn Lattimore out most of the season. And yeah, the secondary couldn't get turnovers. I get that. And that sucked. That was terrible. But teams weren't throwing the ball all over them.
Yep.
If they can get a good handle on running quarterbacks and stay in their lanes, they really would be shutting teams down. And I just feel like, the run defense is going to get better because you got better athletes in there now. But if you can handle running quarterbacks and you can get more turnovers, that's the next step for this defense. And I think they can do it because they're finally getting the athletes. I know, Anna. I know. I trust him defensively, too. I think he would feel more confident about going for it on fourth down. He would feel more confident about calling different plays if he feels more confident in the offense. Yeah. And I think he is getting there. I think getting Carr instead of having either Winston or Dalton is a huge difference. I think getting running backs that he feels like can run side as well as bounce outside, that helps him be more confident. And, of course, having Michael Thomas out there makes you feel confident because a guy like Michael, I'm sorry, it's still this way. There's no receiver that inspires the kind of confidence that he's going to catch everything you throw to him than a guy like Michael Thomas. So real quick, I'm getting ready to answer your questions, Donald. Donald asked, do we have any concern about the secondary?
Very little. I want to see more from the safeties, particularly Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May. Both of them were colossal disappointments to me last year. May because he simply wasn't on the field. You talk about Lattimore missing time. May missed 8 games or most of 8 games. Because of injury. So I want to see him on the field more. And Tyrann Mathieu, I will give him this. He played much better at the end of the season than he did the first 2/3 of it. But he was the poster boy for missed tackles, and being out of position. Now he admitted himself that he had a better grasp on the defense at the end. And we know he's a smart football guy. So I do expect more out of the safeties this year, but until I see it, it is a concern. Depth at the safeties concern me a little bit. They signed Lonnie Anderson, and I like that signing. They drafted Jordan Howden, and I like him. But basically behind May and Mathieu, you have a whole new unit. I don't count JT Gray because he's nothing more than a special teams guy, but PJ Williams gone, Daniel Sorensen gone. I'm missing a third name, out of that. Well, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson obviously gone. So that position is a little concerning to me. Cornerback, not so much. I mean, I think you could have the NFL's best tandem in Lattimore, and if Alontae Taylor develops in year 2 at the rate that he looked like he was playing in year 1, and then you have Paulson Adebo as your number 3. Now, one of those guys are going to have to play in the slot a little more often than they're used to, but they have the skills to do it. And if they falter a little bit, you have a veteran starter like Bradley Roby to fall back on. I think this secondary from position 1 to the back half of the depth chart is probably the deepest we know in the NFL.
So I wanted to bring in 2 names, 2 guys that are new to the secondary, and one of them is a guy who was signed last year as an undrafted free agent and blew out his knee, Smoke Monday. Do you see a position for Smoke Monday? And the other one is Jordan Howden, the safety they got from Minnesota in the 5th round. Do you see an opportunity for him to have an impact this year, or is he more of a guy? He probably won't make the final roster. He'll be a practice squad guy, and they're going to work with him a while. How do you
I'm
see this?
interested to see what Jordan Howden brings. I liked his film, which I admit I did not study pre-draft. I didn't look at it until after they made the pick.
Hmm.
But I saw what the Saints saw, and that is a PJ Williams type of player. Howden started his career at cornerback, with Minnesota, kind of developed into that, hybrid slot safety role, the type of position that PJ Williams played for this team. Howden being a fifth round pick, he's going to have to, he's going to have to distinguish himself on special teams, but he has the versatility that the Saints love in their defensive backs. Now Lonnie Johnson is going to be given the first crack at that PJ Williams role. I think that's why they signed him. But I think Howden has a real shot to stick in the secondary, because for the last few years, a lot of teams will keep 10 defensive backs, 5 corners, 5 safeties. The Saints in recent years have kept 10 or 11, but only 4 cornerbacks. They'll go a lot deeper at safety because they did have versatility like PJ Williams, CJ Gardner Johnson, and all those guys were able to play special teams. So that's where Howden is going to have to make his mark. That's where Smoke Monday is going to have to make his mark. Now, Smoke's going to be able to play special teams. We know from his days at Auburn, that he's an extremely aggressive and pretty rangy safety. I'm not going to say he lacked instincts, but he tended to get beat a lot because he was overly aggressive. So he's going to have to hone that down a little bit and trust his instincts. I think Smoke is going to have to beat out guys like Ugo Amagi, and especially Jonathan Abram, 2 NFL veterans. But if Smoke can do that, he's got the gift of youth on his side. He's got those younger legs. Assuming his knee is okay, he was already turning a lot of heads last year, in rookie minicamp and early in training camp before he went down. So yeah, I think Smoke Monday has got a shot, to stick at the back half of that roster, anywhere between positions, 8 and 10, assuming they keep 10 defensive backs.
Yeah, because I'm counting the safeties right now, and they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 safeties on the roster. So you're looking at what, 4, maybe 5 making their team. So it's only one guy. You're talking about really basically being out, and we also have to talk about Marcus May. May still have to face a suspension for his DUI from 2 years ago when he's with the Jets. So, there's a lot to digest right now, and I'm not in a position yet to start going, okay, this guy's gonna make the team, this guy's not.
Right.
I really can't do that until right before training camp, and then I make my predictions. Then I start seeing how they look once they get into training camp. But right now, I mean, I don't even know if they have 90 guys on the team yet.
They're one short, but Foskey isn't signed either.
Is it Foskey that's not signed, or is it?
Yep.
Okay, I wasn't sure who wasn't signed, because here's another thing that it's amazing. So the first round draft pick for Z signed today, $12 million or whatever, and that was like no news. That was just a little blur that showed up on Twitter.
Check out Saints News Network, but yeah, you're right.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, yeah, it's, and I can remember not that long ago, before the rookie salary cap, I mean, you would go into the first couple of weeks of training camp before your first round pick got signed, and it did set a lot of picks back, because they would say, look, I missed all the off-season activities. I missed all the training camp stuff. So I'm now late, and you want me to play in game 1. I'm not ready to go yet. And it's such a different world. Holdouts just don't happen anymore. I can only imagine what Saints Twitter would be like if we actually had camp holdouts again, where the entire rookie class has not been signed yet and people are just losing their shit.
Yeah.
Each practice, guys aren't there. Or veteran holdouts, guys holding out for money. They're just not showing up at camp, and they hold, and people just losing their mind over these things. How are we going to pay this guy? But, that's really a thing of the past. Okay, so I had one other question for you, and I kind of got sidetracked on that. Donald also asked about the secondary coach. What do you think about the new secondary coach?
Marcus Robertson.
Yeah,
Well, Joe Woods and Marcus Robertson. They're both secondary specialists. I know.
yeah.
Woods got hired as the defensive coordinator, but his specialty is the secondary, which also, by the way, is Dennis Allen's specialty.
Hmm.
Uh, and then they brought in Marcus Robertson. I like Robertson a lot. I remember Robertson from his playing days in the with the Houston Oilers back in the early '90s. Uh,
Oh my God, I can't
right?
believe it. Oh man, my son. Okay, so my son was just watching the 1993 home opener versus the Oilers, the then Houston Oilers, and that game's 30 years ago. Of course, we opened this week. Um, well, this year versus the
Hmm.
Tennessee Titans. So, he's watching this game, and I'm looking at it going, okay, so you realize the big thing about this game was that Buddy Ryan is now defensive coordinator. He was hired to overcome the meltdown they had
Yep.
against the Buffalo Bills, the famous comeback by the Bills in Rich Stadium. So this was the game, the 46 defense, and this was going to be this season. The Oilers were going to actually make it to the Super Bowl because Bud Adams, the owner of the Oilers, said basically, if you guys can't do it with this roster and these coaches, I'm breaking this team up.
Hmm.
And the run and shoot with Warren Moon, Ernest Givens, Webster Slaughter, all those guys, and I think I forgot who the running back was. It was um not Dozier. It was the kid. Oh God, I can picture it.
Was it Lorenzo White? Was he still? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Lorenzo White. Yeah, Michigan State. Michigan
Hmm.
State. So they had the highest scoring offense, most offensive yardage in the league in '92, and they just felt like the defense was the difference. They could not get over the hump on defense. So this was the year that they had to do it, and of course, it all blew up in their faces. If you watch the NFL Films special on the '93 Oilers, I highly recommend that.
Oh, it's a great
93,
one.
93 Oilers, '95 Browns.
Yeah.
Both of them were great, great shows. But the '93 Oilers and that team imploded because basically it was, poor Jack Pardee had no control. He didn't even hire Buddy Ryan. That was Bud
No.
Adams who made that call and put Buddy Ryan in there. And Buddy Ryan had the defense versus the offense. The defensive players did not like the offensive players. How are you going to win a Super Bowl with teams fighting each other like this? And literally fighting because he hated the run and shoot offense
Hmm.
called Chuck and Duck.
Chuck and Duck.
And against the Jets on Sunday Night Football back on, I think it was ESPN. I think it was half TNT first half of the year, then ESPN the second half of the year. National television. Buddy Ryan takes a swing at Kevin Gilbride, which is ironic because Kevin Gilbride actually won a Super Bowl. Buddy
Yeah.
Ryan never did since the 68. Oh, I'm sorry, 85 Bears,
85.
85 Bears and 68 Jets. So those are the only two teams he won Super Bowls with. But yeah, so I mean, so this was a huge game. And now that you mentioned Marcus Robinson, they talk a lot about him because his dad worked in the Superdome as part of the Superdome management. So he was trying to have a big game that night. So I'm sorry to bring all that stuff about the Oilers, but that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh my God, that man, I watched him play.
Hmm. Yeah, and I remember it too. And I was a fan of him as a player, and he coaches a lot like he played. Very aggressive. He wants his defensive backs, especially his safeties, to be downhill thumpers. Which kind of fits in the with the way that Jonathan Abram plays the game. The former Raider safety that they brought in. This is the first time that Robertson has been in charge of the entire secondary. So there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but I think that he has a good fallback. With Joe Woods and Dennis Allen having so many years as a secondary coach. So I don't think the learning curve is with a new coach is going to be as big as what it normally would be in this kind of situation. And again, you have a lot of experience in that New Orleans secondary with Lattimore. Taylor's the young guy, and he's in his second year with the team. They're not going to be relying on any rookies or any newcomers. So I think that's very helpful. I think they're going to help Robertson as much as Robertson is going to help them. But this is going to be a very aggressive, very hard-hitting unit.
Yeah, I just counted the staff. There's 22 assistant coaches on the staff, which is the largest Saints assistant coaching staff, I think, in franchise history. Another name who is also a defensive assistant on this team is Sterling Moore. Mm-hmm. And you guys may remember him as a player not 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 2014, 2015, 2016,
yep.
Where they were pulling him off the street to play because the secondary was so beat up. So, yeah, it's a huge staff. Defensive line coach, Todd Grantham. What do you think of him?
A highly respected college coach, which is where he hasn't coached in the NFL since I think 2009, 2010, something like that. He's made most of his bones, at the college ranks. A lot of it in the SEC, and he has produced some very, very good NFL defensive linemen. I like college position coaches because they really get into the one-on-one teachings, like you talked about before. And it's those kind of one-on-one. Doug Marrone, even though Marrone has plenty of NFL experience, he's always been that college kind of mindset as a position coach, very one-on-one, small group teaching kind of guy. And we saw how that resulted in the play of Cesar Ruiz last year. I am hoping that Grantham has that same kind of effect, certainly on Isaiah Foskey and Brzee since they're rookies, but also Peyton Turner, who's coming into year 3 like Ruiz was last year. Grantham likes very aggressive defensive lines. The Saints defensive line kind of fell off a cliff a little bit last year. With the exception of Jordan, who even, by his standards had a down year. And I thought Granderson had a solid year. Nobody else really stood out on that defensive line, which is why we saw so many changes this offseason. So it's largely going to be a new unit around Cam. And Cam is as much of a coach on the field as you're ever going to see. So it's not like you're talking about an inexperienced guy in Grantham. He's been around the block. He's coached a long time. It's just with a lot of it being at the collegiate level, I'm interested to see what kind of effect that's going to have on the younger guys. I believe it's going to be a positive one. Cam doesn't need coached up. Granderson and Passanio, they are hardworking veterans. I'm not worried about them. But and don't get me wrong, I love Ryan Nielsen. I wish he's the one coach I wish they would have kept in the building. But Grantham again has ties with Dennis Allen. As the rest of the coaches that were brought in this offseason do, or have. But I expect Grantham to have a real strong effect on the young guys that they brought in.
Yeah, I think the problem with Nielsen was he kind of wanted to be more independent and call his own defenses and things and not have it so much Dennis Allen has a say over what the defense is going to do. And I think that's what ultimately ended up with them splitting like they did. Because, I agree. He was of all the assistants they had, I thought he was the one that was going to hurt the most, and it bugs the hell out of me. He's over in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Because I really don't want Atlanta to fix anything.
Ever. No.
I looked up another coach that I was always curious about, DJ Williams, the the quarterback's coach. Well, he's an offensive assistant. I'm sorry, he's not a quarterback's coach. He's the offensive assistant. Because Ronald Curry is a quarterback's coach,
Mhm.
along with he works with the passing game coordinator, which basically he has say on the design of the game plan.
Yeah.
But it's so funny, all these different assistant titles they come up with. But DJ Williams, at first I was thinking he was a linebacker who
Same
came
here.
out of Miami and came out the same time as Jonathan Vilma,
Mhm.
but it's not him. He is
No.
the son of Doug Williams. So once again, I feel old because I watched Doug Williams play. And granted, it's a long time ago he was playing. I mean, he won Super Bowl, what was it, 22
Yes, sir.
in 1987.
Yes,
You
sir.
know,
Let's not talk about who it was against, but
right. Yeah, I know. Well, you know, I remember I was not at that game, John. I've never gone to a Super Bowl game, but I do remember, sitting watching this game at a Super Bowl party in college. And it was it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. It really doesn't. I can still see that game unfolding the way it did. Doug Williams getting hurt, and then he comes back on the field limping, and next thing you know, he's putting 35 points on the board all in one quarter. I'm sorry, I'll stop talking about that game, but yeah, it never seems that long ago until you
No.
really start looking at this. And Jari Evans, of course, is now an official offensive assistant, really kind of taking the place of Zach Strief.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like this coaching staff. I really do. I know people have issues with Pete Carmichael. I know they have issues with Dennis Allen. But to me, Pete Carmichael proved himself to me when Sean Payton was suspended, and Sean Payton went out with a broken leg in 2011, and the offense was still moving at a incredible rate. He wasn't just a figurehead. He actually did things. He did come up with game plans. He did design an offense. Yeah, you can say, well, they got Drew Brees running it, and Drew Brees could run, anything. I get that. But he has ideas. He can call a game. But I keep feeling that he was limited by the players that he had last year. And I think some of the stuff that Dennis Allen was doing, it was limited by his confidence in being able to run more complicated plays. They didn't put Kamara out in space a lot more because they didn't feel like anybody else could block. They didn't run a lot of other guys short yardage because the only guy who was producing short yardage was Taysom Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else was producing short yardage plays. So, we haven't even talked about Kendrick Miller yet, the third round pick, but everything I'm hearing is this guy is really, really going to be good.
And I loved him. I talked him up pre-draft. I talked him up on day 2 of our Bayou Blitz draft coverage, and I think this goes back to what you were saying, what we were both saying about Dennis Allen getting his people in. On offense, Pete Carmichael is getting his people in. Everything that you said previously, I agree with. About Carmichael, and Carmichael deserves a lot of the blame. Don't get me wrong, but I also believe that he was limited not only with his personnel, but with his head coach, who is an ultra conservative guy. As far as the overall game plan and game management, he's not aggressive defensively, but he wants his offense to kind of lean more towards safe rather than riverboat gambler, and. You have to question too, and a lot of us did. A lot of people, including you, did question. hey, is a guy like Jameis Winston going to be able to digest a complex game plan that calls for a lot of pre-snap adjustments and pre-snap reads, and a lot of people had doubts about that. I think the book is still out at the very least, but I think it's very telling that they did not go back to Jameis Winston when he was medically cleared to come back, and stuck with a career what was at that stage a career backup in Andy Dalton. Well, now they have their quarterback. You cannot, nobody can ever question Derek Carr's ability to take in a new offensive system, because the man played for a new offensive coordinator almost every year with Oakland/Vegas. So they have their quarterback that they can design, in theory, what they want to do offensively. You now have young legs in the backfield. You don't have a Mark Ingram, past his prime Mark Ingram. Jordan Howard, David Johnson, guys that were probably a year past retirement. You have young guys like Jamal Williams, Kendre Miller, Eno Benjamin. There you go, Brendan Boylan. I gave your guy a shout out. So I mean, you have guys that can take that backfield load, be a bona fide backfield threat. So that way you can move Kamara out into the slot, bring him in motion, even lining him out wide. You do that with Alvin last year, or even in 2021, you're telegraphing what you're doing. And that's going to allow the pass rush to absolutely tee off on your quarterback. So, just like with Dennis Allen, there are no more excuses for Pete Carmichael, because they have the players that they want for the system that we think that they want to run.
Absolutely. So I think the key for this team is going to have to be that they come out not as an 0-2, 0-3 kind of start, where they kind of have to get their legs out from under them and then improve so that they're playing the best football down the stretch. I think they need to come out hot this year, because they've got so many new phases. They need to establish confidence, and the schedule came out, and that's where I'm going with this. The schedule came out a couple days ago, I should say, and it's really a schedule. I know they talk about how easy the schedule is based off of last year's records. I always throw that stuff out.
Yeah,
I look at it from the standpoint of how many road games you play in the beginning of the year. Where do you play those road games? You're playing Green Bay in September, and you're playing Tampa Bay, New England in the first week of October. So you're not talking about snow. The end of the year, the cold weather games, you're not there. Detroit's at home. The Giants are at home. You're going to Los Angeles the week of Christmas. You're going to Tampa Bay the week of New Year's or New Year's Eve. So you're really looking at a schedule that is very. Oh, I'm sorry. You also play the Bears at home. You don't have to play at Soldier Field in the windy stadium. This schedule, and no international games either.
Yeah.
So you don't have that issue either. And your bye week is week 11. Which I actually like. I think that's where they wanted it last year, not week 13, but week 11, week 10, week 9, somewhere about the midway point. You're looking at a really favorable schedule to start out, 4-2, 6-2, something like that. Because look at this, you're playing Tennessee, who may or may not be starting Levis. I think they're probably playing Tannehill, but you're playing them at home. So the only thing you really need to do, this is a stiff test for the defense early against Derrick Henry, stopping the run. But Derrick Henry, he's one of these guys, you can get him lateral instead of getting ahead of steam and gang tackle him. You can shut down the Tennessee offense that way. So this will be the first time they've ever played Derrick Henry, by the way.
Yeah.
The last 2 times they had to play Tennessee, Derrick Henry was injured, and we went 1-1 against them. So I think this is a very winnable game. I'm just going to run these games through you and see what you think. All right, at Carolina, week 2. How do you see that game playing out? Do you think
I
Dalton?
mean, a road contest always concerns you, especially in prime time. But you probably, I know what the Carolina Panthers are saying about Andy Dalton probably opening the year as a starter. You drafted Bryce Young #1 for a reason. I think Young is going to be their quarterback very early on. But you're talking about new coach, new quarterback, and even if it's not Bryce Young, Andy Dalton is a new quarterback to Carolina. So it's a new coach, new quarterback in only week 2. Without a lot of proven offensive weapons in Carolina, very good young defense, but not a lot of offensive weapons. So, to me, that's a winnable game. The Saints have traditionally played well in Carolina. They played well at all the road venues in the NFC South. But a Monday night game, no less. It's very important to get off to a strong start on the road in your own division. But I think it's a very winnable game also.
Yeah, and by the way, they play no Sunday night games. This is
Right.
the first time in my memory that they're not playing on Sunday night football. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Monday Night Football. This will be. I think if Dalton is going to start any games, he'll start week 1, and they may play Bryce Young towards the end of that game, and this will be a kind of game that they'll actually start him, because I don't think they're going to want to hear all during the broadcast when are they going to play Bryce Young, when are they going to make that decision. I think that they'll ride with him early. You don't take a guy #1 overall if you're not ready to play him week 1. Okay, so next we have at Green Bay with Jordan Love now at quarterback instead of Aaron Rodgers. This is going to be another game where Green Bay, just like Tennessee, is going to want to run the football on you. So this is going to be a test again for the defense. How do you see this game playing out?
Alan, I think the Packers could be one of the worst teams in the NFL. They are in flux mode right now. I don't have a lot of confidence in Jordan Love personally. I didn't coming into the draft the year he was drafted, but they didn't. Outside of 2 very, very talented running backs, they didn't do their new quarterback a lot of favors. He doesn't have a lot of receiving weapons. Certainly not a lot of established receiving weapons. And the defensive side on the Packers, while still talented, they're getting older. And like you said, you get to go to Green Bay in late September rather than late November or late December, like I figured it would be. I think that this is also a very winnable game. If the Saints don't beat the Packers or the next team coming up, on the schedule, then that does not bode well for the 2023 New Orleans Saints. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. I can see, we have never done very well in home openers. And I used to know this record off the top of my head. They didn't win a home opener. The first home opener they ever won was in 71 against the Rams. The next home opener they won was in 1978 against the Vikings. And then after that, it was a long time before they won another home opener. I want to say it was like 1987, maybe it was the next home opener win, or maybe 1988 against the Dallas Cowboys. But yeah, so they, even under Peyton, they traditionally did not win many home openers because they always start slow. They won a lot of seasons 0-2, 1-1. So the home opening record is terrible. So I can see that could be a win. Tennessee could beat us, but I think we should beat Carolina at Carolina because we have played better there than at home against Carolina. Same with Green Bay. I think we beat Tampa Bay because I think Tampa Bay is the other team. We're back to the Bay of Pigs. Green Bay and Tampa Bay back to back, 2 of the worst teams in the NFL this year. I've said this before. I think Tampa is tanking for Caleb Williams. So you're looking at if Baker Mayfield is still starting, this is week 4. They may be putting Kyle Trask in at this point. So yeah, I mean, it just it I think this is a game we're going to win and win pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be a statement game against Tampa Bay. That we're going to be the team to. Oh yeah, yes. I thought you were going to say 79 home opener against the Falcons. Do not. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was. Okay, I was at the 2013 home opener against Atlanta. My daughter was with me for that one. Yeah, but yeah, there's not too many home openers. And of course, the Saints won the home opener in 2009 too, against the Lions, and 2011, which I think was against the Bears. They lost in Green Bay and they beat the Bears next
Mm-hmm.
week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really feel like that this is the year they need to go at least 5-1 in the division,
Mm-hmm.
win the division, and I think they can do it this year. So after Tampa, New England, you're at New England. What kind of team do you think the Patriots are going to be this year?
I mean, any Bill Belichick team, you're going to have to play disciplined football to win. But you look at that Patriots roster, and you don't see a lot of talent, individual talent that jumps off the page. Everybody talks about the AFC East being so tough. I think Buffalo still wins that division rather easily. But I think the Patriots bring up the rear end of it. You look at the talent that all 4 of those AFC East teams have, and the Patriots have by far the least of it. Going to New England is always tough, but again, it's a hell of a lot easier to win in New England in October than it is in November or December. So I like, and the Saints have not used it. They won their last 2 times. One or definitely the last time, but I think the last 2 times they played in New England. But before that, they didn't traditionally play well at New England. But I think it's hard to look at the talent on these 2 rosters and say New Orleans doesn't come out with a win here. So I think that this is a very winnable game for them too.
Yeah. So then the following week, you go to Houston. So you're only talking about, and it happens 3 times in this schedule, back-to-back road games. The first weeks 2 and 3. Weeks 5 and 6, and then weeks 16 and 17. And the only time, I'm sorry, 4 times. The bye week is breaking this one up.
Yeah.
But the Vikings and the Falcons back to back, but you have a bye week in between. But for the most part, you're really not looking at long road trips. You're not crossing the country. The closest you're going to get to it is at the end of the season. You go to it. Los Angeles, then you have to go all the way across the country back to Tampa Bay. That's the only one that looks like it's going to be a bad trip. But hey,
even then, the Rams game is a Thursday game, so you have a couple extra days. The only thing I don't like sending a team. I don't like a team playing a cross country or playing a long road trip on a holiday. And that Rams game is on Christmas Eve, so that concerns me a little bit. But we don't know what kind of team the Rams are going to be yet. They don't. They have a lot of talent returning, but not a lot of depth. So if they get a little bit beat up by injuries again, you could see that another Los Angeles season spiraling out of control.
Especially if Matthew Stafford gets hurt.
Oh yeah.
Stafford is out or ineffective. Yeah, this team is going to really struggle. Those games don't bother me too much because it wasn't that long ago the Saints would play at Los Angeles and have to go play at Atlanta the following week. So in the old NFC West. So I'm used to that by now. It's the Seattle to Miami. It's not, it's a difference, but it's not, it's one of those things. No, I mean, I'm looking at this. I kind of jumped ahead. I only wanted to go through the first 8 games this week because we kind of talked a lot about other things. We can finish the other 9 games next week. But Houston Texans, on paper, it looks like a win, but there's so many new faces, including new coaching staff. that game is going to be a lot tougher than people are going to be
Mhm.
who are looking at the schedule going, oh, it's an easy schedule. That game looks like that's going to be one of the toughest games of the first half of the schedule.
It could be, and I expected D'Amico Ryan's team, to play very hard all year. And they have a lot of young talent. It just has to start coming together. You hope, if you're the New Orleans Saints, that it doesn't start coming together quite yet. But another thing to consider is the the New Orleans Saints have never played well in Houston. Not when it was the Oilers, and not when it was the Texans. In fact, they've never beaten the Houston Texans on the road. It's only been 2 or 3 times, but they've never done it. So this could be very easily be one of those trap games. You're coming off a road trip to New England, traditionally tough place to play, and that's the week before on a short week that you're hosting a playoff team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Texans are very easily. There's always that trap game or two. Not only for New Orleans but most NFL teams. This could very well be it if you're gonna take an early look at the schedule.
Yeah, you're looking at either rookie first round draft choice quarterbacks or one of the top quarterbacks in the league coming up because you play CJ Stroud and the Texans. The following week you play Clemson kid, long hair. I can't think of the quarterback's name right now.
I almost said Trevor Siemian, but
Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. Then you've got AR-15 with the Indianapolis Colts, and he will be starting. And that's at Indianapolis. So, even if Indianapolis is a terrible team, they're still going to be a tough team in Indy. So,
against a running quarterback.
Yes. So, you're looking at a few games this year where the Saints are going to have to show that they can handle a running quarterback because the following week you play Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. So you have to be able to show that you can shut down running quarterbacks, and this team has not done well. Ronnie Bass. No. So it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, it's there's a lot of unknowns in this schedule, and we're going to go through the next group after that because I want to talk about the Bears a little bit more in more depth because I'm not a big Justin Fields fan. I think he shows a lot of potential.
Yeah.
I think he's a dangerous running quarterback.
Yeah, gutty kid.
Yeah, but I don't think he's that good of a passer right now at this stage. I think the Bears need to give him more weapons. They need a better offensive line so he's not carrying the load. All that said, Justin Fields, if this defense can't handle a running quarterback, it'll be a one-man gang and beat the hell out of the Saints because they can't stop him.
Yep.
So, that's what I have to see. So I think Indianapolis the week before is a good test to see if the Saints can handle a running quarterback. And these guys they drafted and these guys they brought in, one of the things they keep talking about is how fast they move.
Yeah.
Sideline to sideline. And if they can seal those edges and keep those quarterbacks in the pocket or run them down, that is going to be a huge difference from what we saw in previous years. So like I said, we'll go through the rest of the schedule next week. Bob, what do you have going on for the Bayou Blitz next week? Or tomorrow?
Brendan and I are no doubt we're going to talk about what we like, what we don't like about the schedule. We're not going to go game by game like you and I are doing, but just talk about some of the trends that the Saints have had against some of the opponents that they'll be facing this year. Going to talk about a probable Cam Jordan extension coming up, and where we think the draft picks are going to fit at least immediately coming out of the gate for the New Orleans Saints. And not only the draft picks, but all the newcomers. Obviously, quarterback is a no-brainer, but what kind of effect guys like Jamal Williams, the defensive tackles, Brian Edwards, what kind of effect they're going to have on the Saints season coming out of the gate?
Absolutely. One thing I did want to get your opinion on this schedule. They have 2 Thursday night games. I hate Thursday night games and
Same.
no Sunday night games. Now, one of the Thursday night games at home, one is on the road. I really, and we'll talk more about this next week, it really pisses me off that you host the Giants Sunday at noon on December 17th, and then that Thursday you have to go to Los Angeles. That's going to be a physical game against the Giants.
Yep.
And you're talking about just a couple days rest, if that much. And you're flying to Los Angeles that Wednesday to get ready to play Thursday night. That part of the schedule really sucks, and it's why I hate Thursday night games. I don't mind Dallas and Detroit playing on Thursday afternoon because it's a one-time deal. It's only one time they got to deal with a short week. Both of them host at home. So there's no traveling involved for either of those teams. And it's usually divisional games they play, and then they've got both teams have 10 days off. So it's fair. But this shit here every week, it really bugged me. I would prefer this Rams game to be a Sunday night game. I really would. And that would actually be Christmas Eve if I'm reading my calendar correctly.
Yeah, it is. Which is another concern. Again, you're traveling across the country, taking these players away from their family, on a holiday. So you wonder. I mean, they're professionals, so they're going to be motivated. But we've seen a lot of teams come out flat in those situations. Especially after you're coming off, off a short week against a team that made the playoffs last year, one of the few, one of only 4 teams on your schedule that had winning records in 2022. So that's, I know weekly Thursday night games were pre-Goodell, but this kind of scheduling fiasco, I'm not even going to call it a quirk. I'll call it a fiasco. That has the real culprit for the Bay of Pigs, Roger Goodell, written all over it.
Yeah, you're right. And yeah, Jimmy Gumbo, I feel the same way. It's really going to hurt college football. I thought that they had a rule that you don't play when college football plays until the season is over with. That's why there's no Saturday games until the college football season's over with. And here they're going to play a Black Friday game, day after Thanksgiving, which is great. But at the same time, that goes head-to-head with college football. Can do the Saints play on Black Friday? I didn't.
They don't. I forget. They don't.
Okay. Because imagine LSU playing Arkansas the same day the Saints are playing. I don't know. Let's just say it's going to be. Let's say it's the Saints Falcons game because that's the game's actually Thanksgiving weekend. Let's say the Saints Falcons game. That's gonna be some pissed off people.
Yep.
Because they're gonna want to watch both games. So I don't like a Black Friday game. I get it. I can see why they're doing it, but I still don't like it. And the last thing, I'm sorry, I was gonna wrap this up, but this was something I just saw right before we went on the air. NBC Peacock is going to carry a playoff game. So it's 100% streaming service. Now, for people like me and people maybe like you, Bob, we've got all the streaming channels.
Yeah.
But for someone like my dad who has his TV's a smart TV, but he has an antenna to pick up digital signals, but he has this antenna set up because he doesn't want to pay for streaming services.
Right.
He's not gonna be able to watch these games. um, you're pretty much phasing out the cable networks, and the networks did say, or the league did say that, stop thinking about in terms of NFC teams are on Fox, AFC teams are on CBS. We're now going to start blending all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be long before there's going to be a CBS Plus. They already have the Peacock channel.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be an ABC Plus kind of channel, Paramount Plus. All these channels are going to start getting, the streaming services are going to get these games, and not the networks any longer. So you're not going to be able to see free football games. I mean, YouTube TV already has the NFL package.
Yeah.
How do you see this?
And it infuriates me. Yeah, it infuriates me. And like you said, we saw this coming, with the Goodell regime years ago. And the fact that Sunday Ticket makes so much money, and the majority of that money, it goes into certain network pockets, but it lines the owner's pockets. And that's why Goodell is the problem that he is. And the league higher ups are the problems that they are, because the owners let them be the problems that they are, because it has nothing to do with the game. It has nothing to do with bullshit cable player safety. Excuse me. It has to do with them. The rich guys making money. So no, I don't think it's going to be long at all. Especially if the Peacock service does as well, and they're doing it for a playoff game, so it's going to make loads of money. Even the novice football fan watches playoff games, so it's going to make loads of money, and then you're going to see the trickle down effect. You're going to see a couple regular season games in the following year, and pretty soon, within 2 to 3 years, it'll be almost all streaming services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I lost NFL Network a long time ago, which I don't miss it. It's terrible now.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are on the 20-year anniversary of NFL Network, and I remember dying to get that. I got it in 2005. It debuted in 2003 because I wanted to see replays of games and that kind of stuff. Well, they don't do any of that anymore. Now it's all, it's 6 hours of Good Morning Football, and it's like ESPN. It's the same problem ESPN has, where it's very little sports content. Most of it is, because it's cheap to make, most of it is people sitting on a set talking about football, not showing NFL films, not showing replays of games. You have to go subscribe to NFL Plus to see replays of games and all these things. Goodell was the one who actually shot Teddy Roosevelt, but he kept giving the speech anyway. But yeah, it's just, it's going to get to the point where you're going to have to subscribe to see anything anymore. And, it's going to be tough to me, it's going to be tough for older generations to embrace that, because they want to see free TV, or they want to see what they saw on cable. But I was going to say, when I had lost NFL Network, but when they had Thursday Night Football and I had to watch a Thursday night game, I had to subscribe to Fubo TV, which is a ripoff, but I had to subscribe to Fubo TV just to get NFL Network to watch a game on Thanksgiving night. I mean, it's just, I'm glad I have Amazon. I have Amazon Plus and so forth, or Amazon Prime Video, so I can see Thursday Night Football. But that, I was really surprised when they went to Amazon, but it obviously was a success because they kept this thing going. And we'll talk more about this in later shows, because we're going to need topics to talk about. But I wanted to bring that up to you real quick, because I'm sure y'all talk about it with Brendan tomorrow night on the Bayou Blitz. All right, Bob's fading quick. I can see it already. I went 15 or 20 minutes longer than I planned on with all this, but that's how it normally goes in this show. Be sure and join Bob tomorrow night in the Bayou Blitz. As always, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.